My husband's mistress called during family dinner and said, "He's moving in with me tomorrow." It was supposed to be one of those rare nights where everything felt normal. I had roasted chicken in the oven, potatoes crisping in butter, and green beans still steaming on the stove. Maya had been chattering about a science project, Caleb was drumming his fork against the table, and Ethan, my husband of 12 years, was even smiling, the kind of easy smile I hadn't seen in months. For the first time in a while, it felt like we were a family again. Then the phone rang. I almost ignored it, not wanting to break the rhythm of the evening, but something tugged at me, and I picked it up. A woman's voice, smooth, deliberate, icy, slid through the receiver. "Clara," she said, like she'd been waiting to say my name. "Ethan won't be home tomorrow. He's moving in with me." For a moment, I didn't breathe. The kitchen clock ticked. The smell of roasted chicken turned sour in my stomach. My grip tightened so hard on the receiver my knuckles turned white. I turned, and there was Ethan, his fork frozen midair, his face drained of color like someone had pulled the life right out of him. I forced myself to speak. "Excuse me?" I asked, though my voice cracked. The woman didn't repeat herself. She just chuckled softly, a laugh that stung worse than the words. Then she hung up. The silence that followed was louder than any argument we'd ever had. Maya frowned, looking between us. Caleb asked, "Mom? Who was that?" My eyes locked on Ethan, waiting, begging for him to say something. Anything that could explain what had just happened. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. That was the moment the floor gave way under me. The world I had built, the sacrifices I made, the trust one had held onto, all of it cracked wide open with one phone call. Looking back, I realized the warning signs were there long before that call shattered everything. Ethan had been slipping away piece by piece, though at the time I convinced myself it was just exhaustion. He started coming home later than usual, always blaming client deadlines or traffic on the interstate. His phone, once left on the counter without a thought, became glued to his side. He'd turn the screen away when messages flashed, typing with his back to me as if privacy had suddenly become a necessity. I told myself not to pry. After all, I trusted him. I told myself he was working hard to provide for us, that the stress of the accounting firm was weighing him down. I wanted to believe it so badly that I swallowed my doubts, even when he came home smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't his. I ignored the late-night showers, the sudden interest in ironing shirts he hadn't cared about before, the moments he looked at me but seemed to be seeing right through me. Meanwhile, I carried the weight of our life. The grocery lists, the endless laundry, the school projects, the dentist appointments. Every detail of our home ran through my hands. I stayed up nights balancing bills, clipping coupons, stretching every dollar so our children wouldn't notice the gaps. I gave up finishing college, gave up the art classes I once loved, gave up nearly every piece of myself so I could be the steady foundation for this family. Maya noticed when her father skipped Storytime. Caleb asked why Daddy was always too tired to play. I answered gently, assuring them he was just busy with work, covering for him like it was my job. I thought protecting them from worry was the right thing, even as my own chest ached from loneliness. Deep down, though, I think I already knew something was broken. I just wasn't ready to face it. The room was still thick with tension when I set the phone back on the hook. My hands trembled, but my voice cut through the silence. "Ethan," I said, forcing each word out slowly. "What is going on?" He shifted in his chair, his jaw tight, eyes darting toward the children. "Clara, you misunderstood. Whoever that was, she's confused." His tone was calm, almost rehearsed, like he'd prepared excuses just in case. But I wasn't letting it slip away with a single brush-off. "Don't you dare insult me," I snapped, my chest tight with fury. "A woman doesn't call during dinner unless she knows exactly what she's doing. Tell me the truth. Right now." For a few seconds, he tried holding my gaze, but his shoulders slumped. The mask fell. "Fine," he muttered. "It's Lydia. Lydia Marks from the office. We've been involved. Almost a year." The words tore through the air like glass shattering. My stomach dropped. Maya's fork clattered onto her plate, her lip quivering. Caleb's small voice broke in, frightened. "Daddy, are you leaving us?" Ethan swallowed hard, avoiding their eyes. "This is better for everyone," he said, barely above a whisper. "It's the right thing." "Better?" The word echoed in my head like poison. Nothing about this was better. Not the tears streaming down Maya's face, not the way Caleb buried his head in his arms, not the hollow wreckage spreading inside me. I couldn't speak. My throat burned, my fists clenched under the table, rage rising hot and sharp, but I stayed silent. Ethan sat there, a man I no longer recognized, while the life I thought we had dissolved into ash. That night, the sound of zippers and drawers opening filled the house like a slow funeral march. Ethan moved from room to room gathering his belongings, avoiding my eyes as if facing me would burn him. He didn't linger in the children's bedrooms, didn't kiss them goodnight, didn't even pause in the hallway where their drawings hung. By the time the front door shut, the air felt heavier than the walls could hold. I lay awake long after, staring at the ceiling while the house groaned in the quiet. Every scene from our life together replayed like a cruel movie. Vacations, anniversaries, even the first time he held Maya in the hospital. Each memory felt tainted now, twisted by the knowledge that his promises had been nothing more than smoke. Sleep never came. The next day, my closest friends gathered around me, offering advice and anger on my behalf. "You need to call a lawyer immediately," one insisted. "Don't let him take advantage of you." Another said, "Freeze the accounts before he drains them." Their voices were full of urgency, but mine was hollow. I nodded, I listened, but my body felt heavy, as if moving forward required strength I no longer had. Soon the whispers began. At the grocery store, I overheard women murmuring Lydia's name. At the gas station, a neighbor gave me that pitying glance that said she already knew. Word spread fast. Ethan wasn't hiding. He was out in public with her, sitting at diners, strolling through town, like the past 12 years of our marriage had been erased. The pain that had left me paralyzed hardened into something else. The shock burned away, leaving behind a cold resolve. If Ethan thought he could walk away and humiliate me without consequence, he had underestimated me. Heartbreak was no longer my cage. It was becoming my weapon. I needed to understand who this woman really was, the one who had so easily dismantled my family. So I started asking quiet questions, listening more closely when people spoke her name. Lydia Marks wasn't just another face in Ethan's office. She had a reputation. Colleagues described her as sharp, calculating, and relentless when it came to climbing the corporate ladder. Promotions seemed to appear in her path, not because of her talent alone, but because she knew how to charm and manipulate the right people. The more I uncovered, the more I saw her pattern. She latched onto those who could advance her, discarded anyone who wasn't useful, and left behind whispers of ruined marriages and broken friendships. It became clear, Ethan wasn't her first conquest, and he wouldn't be her last. What made my blood boil wasn't just her ambition, but the way she flaunted their relationship. Mutual acquaintances let slip that Lydia enjoyed telling anyone who'd listen. Ethan chose me because Clara was boring. She said it like she was proud of ripping apart a home, like she wore my humiliation as a badge of honor. Hearing those words struck deeper than Ethan's confession. My pain had become her entertainment, my life her trophy. That was the moment my grief shifted into something sharper. I no longer wanted explanations, and I certainly didn't want Ethan back. The man I had loved was gone, and what stood in his place was nothing but a coward who had fallen for her games. No, what I wanted now was for both of them to feel the weight of their choices. They had taken everything I gave freely and stomped it into the ground. I wasn't going to beg, and I wasn't going to crumble. I would make sure they regretted underestimating me. I scheduled the meeting in secret, slipping away one afternoon under the excuse of running errands. Sitting across from the attorney, I felt both exposed and strangely powerful. I opened the stack of papers I'd gathered from drawers, filing cabinets, even the glove box of Ethan's car. Numbers and figures stared back at me, and together we began piecing them apart. What unfolded was uglier than I imagined. Behind the image of stability he paraded, Ethan had been juggling obligations he could barely manage. Credit lines he hadn't mentioned, accounts teetering on the edge, and speculative ventures that carried more risk than sense. The careful man I once trusted with every decision had been living a double life, one built on borrowed time. Digging deeper, a pattern emerged, Lydia's fingerprints all over his expenditures. Trips billed under his name, payments made to boutiques, charges for gifts she hadn't bought herself. It was clear she wasn't just part of his personal life, but entangled in his finances, draining him with a steady hand. Each page told me the same story. She had been steering him into obligations he couldn't afford. As I sat there, the path became clear. A direct confrontation would give them the satisfaction of watching me break. But patience, strategy, that would cut deeper. Their arrogance and greed were already eroding the ground beneath them. All I needed to do was step aside and let their hunger consume them, while giving fate the smallest nudge in the right direction. I knew exactly where to place the first crack. With documents tucked neatly into a plain envelope, I mailed them directly to the managing partner at Ethan's firm. No note, no explanation, just enough evidence to raise eyebrows without pointing back to me. Numbers don't lie, and those pages told a story of carelessness and mismanagement. At the same time, I added another layer to the trap. Copies of statements showing extravagant purchases, luxury hotels, boutiques, fine dining, were slipped in, all tied unmistakably to Ethan's accounts. Anyone looking closely would see he wasn't just living beyond his means. He was covering for someone else's indulgence. Lydia's indulgence. Once the seed was planted, I stepped back. The wheels began turning quietly at his office. An internal review launched without Ethan catching on right away. From the outside, nothing looked different. He still left each morning, dressing sharply, carrying his briefcase as if nothing in the world was amiss. At home, I shifted my focus. I poured my energy into Maya and Caleb, making sure their routines stayed steady. Homework, bedtime stories, little jokes at the dinner table. I clung to those rituals like lifelines. Whatever storm was gathering over Ethan's head, I wouldn't let it touch them. Meanwhile, Ethan and Lydia acted as though they had triumphed. Word reached me that they were dining out openly, strolling arm in arm, laughing loud enough for neighbors to notice. They thought my silence meant defeat. What they didn't realize was that silence was my sharpest weapon, and the ground beneath them was already beginning to crumble. The news reached me faster than I expected. Ethan came home one afternoon with his tie loosened, face pale, and without the usual swagger he carried. He had been called into a closed-door meeting, and by the time he walked out, his career was over. Misconduct, mismanagement, and questionable transactions. Words that carried weight enough to sever him from the firm he had once bragged was his kingdom. Lydia's name surfaced too. Her expenses, once hidden under polished smiles and signed approvals, had been uncovered. She tried to distance herself, insisting Ethan had acted alone, but the damage was done. Her reputation was stained, and whispers began to follow her through the very circles she once tried to impress. Behind closed doors, their perfect image started to fracture. Raised voices leaked through the thin walls of their rented apartment. Accusations, slammed doors, bitter remarks, each one stripping away the illusion of their so-called love story. With no steady paycheck and mounting bills, tension clawed at them daily. Lydia resented the loss of comfort she had expected, while Ethan grew defensive, blaming her for pushing him into excess he couldn't sustain. The same neighbors who had once whispered about me now turned their attention to them. Where there had been curiosity and gossip, now there was disdain. People avoided eye contact when Lydia walked by. Conversations dropped when Ethan entered a room. The shine they once flaunted had dulled into something pathetic. I kept my distance, never interfering, never drawing attention to myself. Watching their downfall from the quiet safety of my home, I didn't feel pity. What I felt was certainty. My patience had paid off, and the slow unraveling of their lives was proof enough that justice didn't always need noise. Sometimes it thrived best in silence. The day the judge signed the final papers, I walked out of the courthouse lighter than I had felt in years. The house was awarded to me, the children's routines stayed anchored with me, and financial support was ordered without debate. What once felt like an uphill battle had turned into firm ground beneath my feet. Ethan lingered afterward, waiting by the steps. His voice carried the desperation of a man who had finally realized what he'd thrown away. "Clara, I made a mistake. We can fix this. The kids need us together." His words were hollow, spoken by someone who wanted comfort, not reconciliation. I didn't respond with anger or tears. I simply walked past him. That chapter was finished. It didn't take long before word spread that Lydia had vanished from his life. When the money dried up, so did her affection. She slipped away as easily as she had arrived, leaving him alone with the wreckage he had helped create. Meanwhile, I turned my focus forward. Mornings no longer felt heavy. I brewed my coffee and sat at the kitchen table with a sense of control. I enrolled in evening classes I had once abandoned, started painting again, and let small joys fill the corners of my days. The children saw a mother who was steady, not broken, and our home began to feel warm again, free of shadows. What surprised me most wasn't the freedom from betrayal, but the strength I uncovered in myself. I had been convinced I couldn't stand without him, yet here I was, not just standing but moving forward. The life he abandoned was still mine, only now I was shaping it on my own terms. When I look back now, it almost feels like I'm remembering someone else's life. The woman who sat frozen at that dinner table thought her world had ended. The nights that followed nearly swallowed me whole. I won't pretend otherwise. But I learned something important. Heartbreak doesn't have to be the final chapter. I chose not to let despair define me. Every morning I put one foot in front of the other, even when my chest felt hollow. Slowly, the weight began to lift. I realized I didn't need to carry his betrayal anymore. It wasn't mine to hold. My energy belonged to the children, to the life we still had, and to the dreams I had left waiting in the dark. The path wasn't easy, but it was mine. I rebuilt piece by piece, teaching Maya and Caleb that stability can return, even after the ground shakes. Our laughter came back, not overnight, but steadily, and it was real this time. Our home became a place of safety again, not a cage of unspoken tension. And I learned something about myself too. Dignity isn't found in pretending everything is fine. It's found in refusing to be destroyed by someone else's choices. Ethan's downfall was his own doing, and Lydia's absence proved she never cared for him at all. I didn't need to raise my voice or chase revenge in the open. I simply stepped back and let their actions consume them. So here I am, not the woman he betrayed, but the woman who reclaimed her own soul. If someone betrays you, don't let them keep your soul too. Take it back piece by piece. That's what I did.